I wanted to share, this is Kevin Watson's Doctrine, Spirit, and Discipline, and there's some interesting history pertaining to disaffiliation. I think Cameron will be interested in this, waiting online. It deals with Richard Allen and the Mother Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. Here's a picture of that church right here. It's not focusing. Focus. It's not going to do it for you. I don't know why. So the beginnings of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Watson writes, are interwoven with Richard Allen's own story, and they repeatedly illustrate American Methodism's failure to fully integrate and consistently commit to racial equality. Allen was active in St. George's Methodist Episcopal Society in Philadelphia and was at the center of many of the tensions and contradictions of early American Methodism regarding race. Francis Asbury recognized Allen's gifts and grace for ministry, licensing Allen as a deacon in 1799, a year before the General Conference formally permitted African Americans to be licensed as deacons. Yet while his leadership was formally recognized, there were also some boundaries segregating black leaders, divisions based on race. I'm going to skip around a little bit. I wanted to talk about Mother Bethel. There's also another leader named Absalom Jones that is mentioned here that I'm going to skip over. Very interesting book. Y'all should buy this book. I'm going to try and get Watson to interview with me soon. But the thing that I wanted to especially point to was eventually Richard Allen, got active in Mount Bethel. And, I think it was this other guy, Absalom Jones. It's been a while since I read this, but the section I wanted to talk about was Mount Bethel's relationship with the Methodist Episcopal Church was always complicated. Richard Allen shrewdly used the connection with the denomination for protection and legitimacy, intending to, quote, create an interdependent relationship with white Methodists while maintaining black autonomy, end quote. In 1805, James Smith, a Methodist Episcopal Church elder, he was white, asserted the right to complete control over Bethel. Allen recounted that Smith, quote, waked us up by demanding the keys and books of the church and forbid us from holding any meetings except by order of him, end quote. After seeking legal advice, Allen discovered that the Articles of Incorporation they had signed, which had been drawn up by the Methodist elder Ezekiel Cooper, meant Bethel essentially, quote, belonged to the white conference, end quote, and not the members who had paid for the building. Is this sounding familiar? Allen was further advised that Bethel could revise the Articles of Incorporation by a 2/3 majority vote of Bethel's members. He then called a congregational meeting where new Articles of Incorporation were passed, quote, before the elder knew anything about it, end quote. The result was called the African Supplement. It revised Bethel's Articles of Incorporation, resolving any questions about control over the church so that it was clear the trustees of Bethel Church owned the church and controlled access to it. This is in Philadelphia, by the way, which is a stone's throw from the Baltimore-Washington Conference. So a lot of the same themes in the same area. The African Supplement continued to affirm a connection between Bethel and the Methodist Episcopal Church, anticipating that the elder would continue to preach and administer the sacraments in the church, yet even this became a matter of contention as the elder only preached 5 times at the church, and the trustees were unwilling to pay the exorbitant salary demanded. So I'm going to skip the next paragraph. This gets to suing for control of the building now. Once white leaders recognized the extent to which black congregants at Bethel refused to submit to white Methodists any longer, they sued for control of the church. So the white conference was suing the black congregation for control of the church building and assets. Refusing to acknowledge the validity of the African Supplement, they also decided to sell the church at public auction on June 22nd, 1815. Can you imagine? That's what I get for laughing. Allen, determined to control the only thing he could control, he retained the church by being the highest bidder at the auction. His ability, this is Richard Allen, he came to the auction, the building got auctioned off. His ability to pay $10,125 for Bethel and the rental lots near it shows his foresight. Allen's biographer described that amount as, quote, a fortune for people of any class or color. Allen used the money to buy back perhaps the most important free black institution in all of America, end quote. So that was an exceptional circumstance, but it shows that this problem that we dealt with, have been dealing with in the United Methodist Church, goes back, actually. A lot of people say, well, how were we to have known that it could go this way? Well, history is a thing. And so it just so happens that we're living in a historically illiterate time where people don't research their roots. And so that means that they can fall for the same tricks that have been used ever since time immemorial, really. But when you're a Methodist and you learn about the trust clause, and almost all clergy do going through seminary, but you don't learn the times that it's gone bad and the harm that it can do, and then how expensive it can be to for a church to get its own autonomy. How many churches do you think would have really signed up with the MEC or the UMC or any of these denominations that use the trust clause if they saw how hard it was to get out if things went bad? And the answer is hardly any would do it, really. Hardly any are going to say, oh, the institution will always be the same. It will always be faithful. We can always trust them. That's the inflection point we're at right now, where a lot of people are having to reckon with the reality that institutions change, leadership changes, and that whenever you are vulnerable to them in that way, if you're not regularly given input into that system to keep it pure and functional, then it is going to bite you, and it's going to be bad. So remember this lesson. Learn your history. If you haven't bought this book yet, it's a really good book. You should learn this history.